Orica Green Edge's Michael Matthews led the Giro back to its home country, where he was, thanks to some slippery road conditions, introduced by BMC's Manuel Cinziato to Italy's great tradition of conversation. The end decision was to neutralize the GC times after the final circuit, but still sprint for a stage win. Almost on cue, Nasser Bouhanni needed a bike change just outside the final lap. FDJ brought him right back up, and then it started drizzling. 2 crashes in the final 3 kilometers justified the neutralization decision and gapped the giant Shimano sprint train off the front. But FDJ somehow negotiated the ice rink to get Bouhanni back in touch, and the Frenchman somehow managed to work his way up to Luka Mesjic's wheel just seconds later. The handful of contenders negotiated one last, unbelievably slick corner, but Mesjic lost his chain right as he attempted to launch, and Bouhanni eventually closed the gap left by this mechanical to pass lead-out-turned-sprinter Tom Vailers for the win. Stage 5 ended with dual Cat 4 climbs. Here's an ominous shot of a weather gauge, and as soon as the water hits the lens, the riders hit the deck. BMC's chase finished off the break and kept the attacks down, but Omega Pharma's Gianluca Brambilla showed some descending skills and had about 30 seconds at the foot of the final climb. But the sun came out and Katusha turned up the pace, chasing him down and even gapping the field inside the final kilometer. But race leader Matthews, perhaps concerned about Sky's Edvald Bosenhagen's GC position, closed the gap. A host of big names gathered to contest, but it was Lampre's Diego Ulissi slipping past Trek's Julian Arredondo along the barriers and almost cruising to the win. He is the most interesting man in the Giro. Stage 6's Cat 2 finish was slated to be the first GC shakeup of the race, and oh look, a rain cloud. Not sure what training these officials get, but I would not advise moving side to side if you ever find yourself in this role. Catch finally came at 12k to go and the race was on, and almost immediately there was a crash or crashes. The raw scale of the carnage made it impossible to tell. The huge incident left the very nose of the field, 12 riders, including BMC's Cadel Evans and Orica Green Edge's Matthews, racing away alone. The peloton eventually regrouped, with Movistar leading the chase, but the leaders were almost suspiciously cooperative, maintaining and extending their 30-second advantage. Evans powered forward with a K to go and then swung wide in the final bend, leaving the win to Matthews, likely a gift in exchange for the cooperation that gained Evans a minute on his likeliest GC rivals. A banged-up peloton seemed on the fence about whether or not to let the break go the next day, and the gap hovered around 5 minutes for a very long time. The field finally kicked things up around 30k to go, and 20k later the break began attacking itself, almost dooming it to a catch inside the final 3 kilometers. Giant Shimano continued to exercise lead-out excellence, delivering Mesjic to the final bend, but he seemed just a touch under-geared, and maybe left a bigger gap than necessary along the barriers. This allowed Bouhanni and Trek's Giacomo Nizzolo to slip around, where the FDJ rider took his second stage, coming just a bit faster than his Italian rival in the closing meters. Stage 8, serious GC business, and good lord, is that the sun? It clearly dazzled a few of the riders, but Movistar finally got things going around 48k to go, and Matthews finally decided he'd had enough of being a GC rider. In the break, Arredondo dispatched his more gravitationally inclined companions at 37k to go, soloed to 2 KOMs to take a commanding lead in that competition, before being joined and then dropped by Europcar's Pierre Roland on the final 3k of the last climb. Roland still led with 450 meters to go when Katusha's Daniel Moreno leapt clear of the field. He made the catch 200 meters later, but then the wheels absolutely fell off, just as Arredondo's nicely rested teammate Robert Kieserlowski attacked. It gapped everyone except Ulissi, but we know how that tends to turn out. The GC contenders came in clumps a few seconds down, with Evans inheriting the Maglia Rosa. A series of mid-sized climbs wrapped up stage 9, and BMC was content to defend the jersey by letting a large break roam on a minutes-long leash. OGE's Peter Veining leapt clear of the escape at the foot of the final climb and was joined shortly thereafter by Europcar's Davide Malacarne. The duo collaborated well, and BMC seemed in no hurry to catch them. Perhaps to their detriment, as FDJ's Alessandre Geniez, AG Desert's Alexis Villermoz, and finally teammate Domenico Pozzovivo, who's in 10th overall, felt inclined to break away. BMC and OPQS eventually turned up the chase, not that it made any difference to the two leaders, who engaged in almost a track sprint. Veining sat up behind the Europcar rider, who left the inside just a little bit too open around the final sweeping bend, though the Orica Green Edge rider had a surprising burst given his gangly build, and might have won regardless. Pozzovivo came in 40 seconds later, but more importantly, nearly 30 seconds ahead of the rest of the GC group, moving him up into 4th overall. I'm Cosmo Catalano, and that's how the race was won.
Water slide world, I'm really crazy about your wild slides.
Wild, you bet.
Water slide world, the #1 in family fun.
Fun, you bet.
I'm on a baby gonna slide, slide, slide. Come on a baby gonna glide, glide, glide. Come on a baby gonna slide, slide, slide. Away, gonna glide down, fly, whirl around, touch the sky. wide world.
Exit 21 off the Northway, I-87, 1/2 mile south of Lake George Village.